from Status, I'm going to pronounce it Status. How do you keep up with the frantic rhythm of the web development scene, especially JavaScript and libraries is changing?
Right. So in my case, I don't, because I don't do that.
Yeah, like but the game development industry, like you don't have this in the JavaScript scene, like there's a lot of talk about JavaScript fatigue, and like you cannot. Can you relate to that tooling fatigue at all?
No,
not at all.
It's great whenever a new tool comes out and it just it does something that used to be hard is easy now. Oh, great! I mainly use Unity. That's like what I know the best in game development. And that's a tool that keeps evolving a lot. And, as with any product, when a new version comes out, sometimes you're like, oh, they changed this, I don't like it. But overall, it's a great improvement. Like, a while back, their sound system, introduced a lot of more, fine-grained mixer controls and all these things. That used to be hard. It used to be a thing you had to write yourself or use some sort of third-party plugin or... you see great advances in other areas, like there's a company called Mixamo that made like a really cool sort of animation pipeline thing where now anything can be animated. It's like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just great improvements all the time that come out, and I don't know. Maybe the difference is that it sounds like in JavaScript, the things that come out are comparatively smaller. Like Unity is like a whole all-encompassing development platform, much like the Unreal Engine or Crytek or it's like a giant engine, and typically you marry yourself to one of these big engines, and then you sit with that engine for a long time.
Yeah, but there are a lot of engines coming out. In game development,
right?
There's
Amazon
tons. Yeah.
Lumberjar just launched, that sort of thing.
And there is tons of game engines.
Sure, but maybe the difference is that as an outside observer of JavaScript people, you guys do seem to fetishize what is new and interesting. And some guy comes out and is like, "Now we do it like this.
Yes.
Now we do it reactive."
Yes.
And even though you could use this pattern before as well. I don't think that's the same in game development. There's more like, people. It's more like a tectonic shift where people say, now Unity is slowly catching up with the rendering potential of Unreal, but I still prefer Unreal for these reasons. It's more like a slower evolving.
So why do you think that is? To me, it feels like there is a bit of an inertia in game development. It's not that there are more JavaScript frameworks coming up. It's just that people are a bit more skeptical in the game industry.
I mean, I think it's
slower to adopt.
Of course they are. People are extremely risk averse when they start a new project because you typically don't want to be the first team ever to try a new game engine unless you have some sort of deal with the maker of that engine that will lead to.
What do you think that is? Maybe is it because games are bigger in budget?
No, but sometimes they suck. Sometimes they suck, and then you commit, and it's extremely expensive to change midway through. All the programming might be different. The art pipeline might be different. It's not just a pure programming thing. This thing needs to interface with your art team, and and they might have to learn a completely new way of setting it up. And it's super expensive if you shift these sort of things. And I mean, right now we're talking about, shifting your entire game engine. That's madness. You would never do that midway through a project. And if you do it between projects, it's usually because you are using something that's kind of old. Like say a while back, I used Flash, for example, as the main game engine that I knew. In a lot of companies, they were like, oh, but we're going to publish the desktop now. Should we use Adobe Air? Because that's the pipeline we know. But then at some point you just say no, Unity is so much better than this. We're just going to use that. because it gives us power, and people sort of know it. You usually have like a few people who might already know it because they've kind of become acquainted with it outside of their main professional project.
But I feel like this same risk also exists in
JavaScript.
In JavaScript, I mean, like you can't switch from React to Angular midstream in your project. Like, or you can, of course, but it will like
Fool.
yes, it would be like like it would be so impactful on your timeline. I think that I've worked in a product company now for quite some time, and you don't feel JavaScript fatigue inside of a product company that has one singular product, because switching platforms inside of that big of a project, like Spotify is. Like that thing is Spotify's 10 years old now.
Oh,
that is
yeah.
just one. Like games, I mean, still games at least have like a 3-year cadence or something like that. Spotify says, this is gonna stay around for.
Yeah.
So
you have so much like code already written in this way that the benefit of having it structured in a different way probably doesn't outweigh the cost of changing all this code.
Yeah, or
if that's something you have to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you need to evolve it somehow at some point.
Of course.
But that is that's a very big decision, and it happens very slowly and very naturally, and you kind of like. We're looking React is starting to take hold now and React has been around for 3 or 4 years. I don't remember. So you just wait for things to crystallize.
Right.
I think that JavaScript fatigue. I have a theory that is mostly people that are working in consulting. Because in consulting, you come to a company and they need some kind of software tooling to be built.
Right.
And you need to pick a tool for that, and you want to pick like a good tool.
Of course.
So you do your research, and since you don't have an existing product, you might we don't have anything to lose, so we don't need to make a super safe bet.
Right.
We can just But I also think that is not the whole part. I think that JavaScript also has an overwhelmingly large amount of junior developers that do not have a computer science background. So it's when you're new to development, you want to stay ahead of the curve. You want to find the best way of doing things.
Right. Yeah.
And
I remember that. I used to be super into. There's a burning architectural pattern in my head for how to update data in a web interface or whatever, And I was like, there is one answer.
Yes, you're looking for the one answer, right?
And you think there's all these principles that sort of feed into it. And, one way is better than another way.
Yes.
But it's more complicated than that in real life. You realize as you grow older, things have advantages and disadvantages, and it depends on the context and the application that, which one is better.
Yeah.
So
I see
you get more mellow as you get older, like that.
Exactly. And I think that you're touching on a great point here, that there is a notion, there's a switch in your programming career once you realize that there isn't a best tool.
No.
So I realized now that once I started learning about video and photography and stuff, when I started out, I was looking for the best camera. And people that is...
It's not a thing.
That's not a thing! And you kind of conceptually understand it, but the more you get into cameras, you start realizing how enormously not a thing it is. There's
I still thought there would be a better camera, had a better, I don't know, image, better look better.
Exactly.
The camera. That's my very abstract way of cameras. They capture images.
Yes, this
and they
camera.
look bad or they don't.
Yeah, this camera captures more light,
or higher resolution.
Yes, but capturing more light has a consequence, and it's
right. It's an artistic image that emerges in the end that depends on your intention.
But if you have the mindset which is the best framework, Angular or React? Okay,
I mean, Quora, by the way.
Yeah, I know that is a very common Quora question. I'm making it in a funny voice and making fun of people, but that is a way I used to think that there was genuinely a tool that was better than another tool, and in some ways. Some tools are, of course, of just higher quality because they're just better made. But generally, when you build a project, you can start to look at the different tooling options available and find that this is a better fit.
Right.
You can just not arbitrarily, separate from a project or a task, look at a set of framework and say that this is a better framework.
Yeah.
That it's
you can say something like, statistically speaking, if I were to pick a framework, this one has a higher chance of being the best framework, but you would be wrong some percentage of the time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And a consequence of looking at things that way, finding the best framework, is that since technology improves, then you will constantly have to look at new sites to find the next best thing, the next new thing, because that might be better.
Yeah.
And that is the problem with best first thinking instead of task first thinking.
What do I need to, what do I want to exist, and what do I need to do to make that exist is a question that is more interesting than, which framework is better.
Yeah. Coming back to observables and patterns.
Yeah.
That is why it's very important to focus on having good fundamentals, understanding, focusing on patterns, focusing on learning how software interacts with its own complexity, sort of, and learning to see that when you encounter a problem or a task, that you see that, okay, this problem is probably going to have these characteristics, these things are probably going to be hard, and only then can you start looking for a tool. Yeah. Also, probably it's a very good approach to not immediately start looking for a tool. It might be a good, even if it's your intent to always, from the start to use a tool, start coding on the project, a problem a bit, for yourself, trying to implement the tool so that you understand the nuances of the problem a bit.
I mean, and that's also that's a build versus buy sort of decision. That's a thing with reoccurring sort of questions, right? Because, tools bring you power.
Yeah.
They make it easier because they already exist. You don't have to make the tool. But a lot of the time, they also come with, restrictions. They make you make things in a certain way that the tool prescribes, and that's a negative thing. Usually, that's you lose control.
I can still, the bank that I've just recently switched to. I can kind of see what era of web development that was, because there was an era where ASP.NET and Rails were two examples of software that just made applications look in a certain way. If you built it, it just became natural to build the application in a certain way. And I guess if you didn't, the framework just punished you.
Yep.
So this is built with Rails by just looking at it. It's interesting how they constrain you. It was a framework first era.
Yeah, totally. And you just have to live in the framework, and more like you're driving a car rather than building a road. I don't know, building a car. I don't know. But you can only go where it's kind of...
All right, we're out of
bounds.
We have to